Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
It's time for another conversation here on the Cattleman's Call podcast. Lane Nordland, happy to be with you as always. And today's program is brought to you by WSR Insurance and AgRisk Advisors. They will be sponsoring our weather updates with meteorologist Matt Makens over the next few months. Of course, Matt has joined us in the past, based out of Denver, Colorado. Matt, how are things going? We're actually recording this conversation at the start of the year here in New Orleans, Louisiana for the Cattle Convention 2023. But how's convention treating you?
It's been a very good week, very busy week, but it helps when, unlike last year when I got up and talked about the drought and everybody looked bad at me, this year at least some folks cheered to hear that Niño was on the way out. So a better reception this year for me personally.
Which is really nice because I always joke, being a farm broadcaster, people get really upset when we talk about lower markets, especially on the cattle and on the wheat end of things. But I always say we don't have it as bad as the meteorologists do when weather changes from the forecast.
That's why disguises come in very handy around convention.
Yeah, but you even made it down to Cafe Du Monde. How was that?
It's a hike in the wrong direction from the convention center. So, yeah, the boots were not a wise choice for that walk this morning. But it does taste good.
Good. Well, we you should have brought more for all your friends here, Matt. But no, we're here at Cattle Convention. As you mentioned, you were a part of the Cattle Facts forecast because weather is so important for the producers out in the countryside, and that past weather events impact the future of production for so many years on so many levels, especially for livestock production. And just to jump into it right now, I know we've talk so much about La Niña and El Niño, and sometimes guys like me, I'm like, gosh darn, I think I mixed those two up. Could you just share what the two weather events are and how they impact the industry, and maybe what that forecast was that you shared during that Cattle Facts forecast here just this week?
Sure. It does get confusing because we throw out all these terms, and over the years, personally, in my profession, we always just assume people know. But in this case, La Niña and El Niño are short-term climate patterns. They last, 18, 24 months on average. This last La Niña was historically long, though, third year in a row, and historically strong. And the combination is not only, it's only happened about two other times since 1950. But what it is it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around a small area of ocean. To me, you look at a map, it looks small, but it's massive on scale. And it's the ocean that stretches between South America and Southeast Asia. And it's right along the equator. And that area likes to be cold or warm. And when that area is colder than normal, that's a La Niña pattern. When it's warmer than normal, it's El Niño. And what that does is the ocean acts like a source of energy. So if you have warm ocean, it's energy to the atmosphere, creates storminess, and there's a ripple effect downstream. You take away the storminess when you have La Niña, and you're taking away storm impacts downstream. And the ramifications are not only drought for North America and La Niña, but drought globally in a lot of cases, with the extreme exception of Australia. They like to hear La Niña. It brings them wet weather. So in a nutshell, we're just looking at the ocean and a relatively small part of the globe, and that drives our climate pattern for, like I said, 18 to 24 months on average.
But this La Niña has been almost 3 years. What were some of those factors in that continuation than a typical La Niña?
In the past 20 years or so, La Niña has been favored. It's been a favored pattern to last a little bit longer, be a little bit stronger. Not to say we're not getting strong El Niños within that period, but La Niña has been preferred. How the northern Pacific, we talked about right around the equator, how the other ocean basins are behaving is enhancing La Niña when La Niña is present. So there's tons of factors. We can get into it in the nitty-gritty at a different venue probably someday. But there are other factors that are creating La Niña patterns to last a little bit longer, and the El Niño patterns over the last 20 years relatively shorter.
So the chances of more of a neutral weather pattern or focusing more in that shift to El Niño, what could that look like here in 2023?
If most people can think back to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That was a dramatic swing from incredible drought numbers to incredible wet numbers. It was a long, drawn-out process. And it was similar in that it was a robust La Niña, an extended period of what we call neutral conditions, and then El Niño kicked in. To eliminate that drought phase from 11 and 12 into 13, it took until about 2017. Very long, drawn-out process. And not to say that what we are going to go through is identical to that, but I do anticipate a long phase of being kind of neutral conditions. And what that means is, yes, your weather's kind of quote-unquote normal, but it's taking away the extreme drought and the extreme wetness. So you're looking at more neutral territory, taking the extremes away. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see that for a period of time, and then once El Niño kicks in, we're going to see wetness start to spread across the country again.
Yeah, and especially for producers west of the Mississippi. We've been through that drought for several years now, and grasshoppers. They're lovely as well. It's quite the plague that we had up in Montana with grasshoppers, and 3 to 4 years worth of drought. What is that maybe looking like over the next weeks and months, precipitation wise? Like we knew that right before Christmas we were going to get hit with that polar vortex and going to have more of a milder January, which pretty much we did. Well, then February came and
cold again.
Yeah, cold again. What can folks really anticipate? A lot of producers are starting to calve as well, so a lot of important stuff on their mind as they prep for that.
I think the bigger talking points. Let's be regionally specific. So we'll go from Montana, say down through the Dakotas into Nebraska, Iowa, Upper Midwest. These areas have, the vast majority of them have quite a bit of snow and ice on the ground. A lot of them are muddy already. That snowpack will be added to by additional storms. Not that it's going to be massive, but we'll have additional. So we're going to keep the snowpack there going longer than a typical season, and that in turn will provide colder temperatures than normal. So anybody calving there, say through, certainly through February into mid-March, perhaps late March, you're going to contend with mud, wetness, and colder than normal temperatures, and that's not a very good combination. But now let's take a look from Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, and south. Different story. Warmer than normal is probably going to be how it plays out. Not wetter than normal, but probably break-even territory. So we already have bad soil moisture conditions kicking off the growing season. There's not going to be a lot of grass growth, not a lot to forage off of. So those are going to be concerns for the southern plains. I wish they could get more moisture and help kick off the growing season, but I think it'll be delayed just for the lack of precip coming their way.
Now, on a global scale, South America has just been seeing quite a lot of drought, and that impacts our commodity prices, especially on that corn and wheat front as well. And then Australia and Russia, just major agricultural production regions. Well, on that global scale, again, what in the near term, what is the forecast looking like there? Because as a farm broadcaster, I'm always talking about, especially for grain prices, just the impact that weather is having in South America, and thus the impact that has on the price of grain and feedstuffs and whatnot. What is that global forecast looking like as we go into that neutral phase?
Sure. We'll do, let's say, South America, touch on Europe, and then I'll touch on Australia. Yep. So South America, remember 1 year ago from convention, we were talking about the second crop not looking all that good. We've already made progress in that if you look at the crop health today versus 1 year ago, it's already improved for Brazil. Sadly, Bolivia down into Argentina, it is as bad, if not worse, than last year. And then let's project out, say, 3 months. The moisture is going to prefer central and northern Brazil. So they're going to wrap up their growing season favorably in Brazil for the most part. Zero improvement, and probably getting even worse for Argentina, especially northern Argentina to southern Bolivia. So that's going to be for South America. Very little improvement, although slightly better than last year for Brazil. As you get into Europe, last year we had a good snowpack. Ukraine had deeper snows. A lot of Eastern Europe, Northern Europe had snowpack. This year is different. There isn't that snowpack. So any threat of frost, there's just not that protective element. Crop health, like vegetation health, very similar to last year. And as we go forward, yeah, we're starting things off kind of on a better note than last year, but it's going to be dry, it's going to be warm. So not necessarily a favorable kickoff to their season. Now, Australia has made tremendous headway in crop health, not just over the last year, but over the last several years. They had a very wet La Niña phase, very strong monsoon. Flooding was a concern in Australia, so much water, especially eastern Australia. The outlook going forward, as we go into a neutral pattern across Australia, you start to see neutral conditions, and literally like going right back to average conditions this spring and this summer. Our spring and summer, their fall and winter.
And it's going to be interesting to see the impact that cold weather right before Christmas had on U.S. winter wheat crops. And I'm not here to talk about wheat or whatnot. I know it's a cattle podcast, but so much of that wheat country does impact the feeding, pasture land, whatnot. And up in Montana, we had pretty good snow cover on that when it was about 50 below with that wind chill. But in Kansas and on to Texas, there wasn't much cover there. So I'm interested to see. I know the ratings are down quite a bit in that latest USDA report, crop condition wise. But it's going to be interesting to see just how much damage that cold weather caused back in December.
Yeah, I think it. I shouldn't say substantial, but I think it will be substantial. The hope, looking at that cold outbreak, was that please send enough moisture to give 3 inches of snow. Just give us that as a minimum. Help that soil moisture. Give us that 3 inches of snow, or at least a light covering. And it really, the vast majority of Kansas did not. And then, of course, as you went farther south, there was some rain, there was some pockets of snow, but not enough to help. And then all of a sudden, that sharp cold came in so quickly. I would be shocked if it's not substantial impact from that cold wave. And then, we did warm up somewhat in between that one and what came in late January, early February, but that was another whammy for a lot of folks again. So.
Yep. And those cold temperatures, are we looking at some more, polar vortex possibilities or anything like that, where especially with calving coming up with that cold weather? Is there anything, a system up north that we should be aware of?
We do have to worry about additional cold outbreaks, and I would say all the way through March, because Canada, with the exception of some of the western prairies, Canada is covered in snow. The northern plain states covered in snow, and it's not likely to go away. So you're reinforcing any system that's coming through there already, and you're adding more cold to it or keeping it cold. So I think as we go throughout February, there's a strong signal that most of the U.S. will be cooler than average. And where's the bullseye of cold? Montana, Dakotas, Wyoming, Nebraska. And then as we hit March into April, we'll see things swing. So maybe the extremes, if you will, of cold subside, but still colder than average. And then once we hit May and June, we'll get rid of that snow. And once that snow is gone, then we'll see a pretty substantial warm-up.
And actually, I didn't pay attention yesterday. Did the groundhog see his shadow or not?
I believe he did.
He did, so he went back in.
Six more weeks of winter
so
was his, what do they call it, prognostication from Puxatawny Phil?
Puxatawny Phil. So, I mean, your trade lines up with his pretty well here this year.
It does, and we're gonna share in royalties, I believe. Yeah. His agent called me, and we have a pretty sweet deal worked out.
That's good.
Yeah.
Maybe
next year they're going to pull me from the hole, and see
the
if I
Cattle
see
Facts Conference.
Randy Block is going to pull me from a little den and just hold me up and say, "Did Matt see his shadow?" And I'll wiggle my nose.
I want to see all the Cattle Facts guys in top hats and dress traditionally like the guys.
I want to hear Randy Block read a poem about it.
But, I do want to thank again our sponsors of this podcast, WSR Insurance and AgRisk Advisors, because, they provide producers those risk management tools when the weather doesn't cooperate or what needs those additional tools just to help producers get by during times of drought and whatnot. And I know that pasture rangeland forage insurance option that so many producers have been taking advantage of because of these drought times have really saved operations. But also, Matt, how can a weather forecast truly be used as a risk management tool as producers follow your commentary with NCBA and with Cattle Facts for days and weeks to come and just making those management decisions?
I know so many of the publications out there of mine are, the seasonal outlooks going out 3 months, maybe even 6 months or 9 months, as was the case with the Outlook seminar here. But there's so much more, that the sponsors are providing online, like Facebook and Twitter, email blasts, and within that, we're trying to not, go out as far. We're trying to be far more specific in hazardous, impactful weather events coming your way. Say maybe not this week, but over the next 2 weeks, watch for these areas. And it's no, we can't control the weather, but to just give somebody like yourself in Montana a heads up that, February 28th, 2.5 weeks away, it does look darn cold. Mm-hmm. Make your plans now. Yep. And that's the kind of thing that the sponsorship and social media is great for, because you're reaching folks on a different level. You're giving them that early alert that, hey, heads up, this one's going to be abnormally cold or abnormally wet. Make your plans now. You got 2 weeks to adjust.
Well, how about snowpack? I know up where we're at, I don't know the actual percentages, but the Ski Hill Showdown, which is not too far away from my in-laws' ranch, I mean, they could have opened a month before the actual ski season, and I haven't skied since high school, but I have to drive by the hill quite a bit, and they just seem to be having such a great year with snow. Last year wasn't so great, but and I use Montana so much because that's where I'm from, that I see all the weather every single day. But what's it like in Colorado? What's it like in the Sierra Nevada, snowpack-wise, for what that runoff's going to look like?
Well, Montana and the Rockies all the way up into Canada, down into, say, the Tetons, the Northern Cascades in Washington and Oregon, really a robust start to the season. And those areas climbed so far ahead of average on snowpack, and yet we've kind of dwindled that snow, but we're still looking at average to above average snowpack. And we're going to add to that throughout the season. The snow pattern will start to progressively move north again. So there's those areas, like Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, those ranges are likely to end right around average, maybe slightly ahead of the game. Once you hit Colorado, Utah, and head south into Arizona and New Mexico, the northern ranges, so the Wasatch, the Mosquito, the upper Yampa Valley, those areas have really good snowpack. Currently, greater than 125% of average. Mm-hmm. And that will feed the Colorado. But every other snow basin, part of the Colorado River system, central southern Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, so hit and miss. And most of those basins will end below average, and substantially so. Then we go to the Sierras and these atmospheric river events that people were talking so much about over the last 4-6 weeks. That dumped a tremendous amount of water on the Sierras, and some of those stations there are well greater than 200% of normal. So they're going to end the season very well. But a reminder that water doesn't really go anywhere. It's saved in California or goes to the ocean. It's not going back down to the Colorado or up north. So the Sierras are isolated. I wish they could have shared some of that snowpack to those other ranges we just discussed.
And, the Mississippi River, it's just right out of the convention center right here, and we saw just the barge traffic come to a halt on many of these river systems because there wasn't much water volume going down there. What does that look like here, especially for that important commodity transportation?
It'll be really important for March and April to be snowy in Montana.
Thanks. No, we need it. We need it.
The pressure is on you, and if it's not provided, I'll send you some notes.
Okay.
Fairly negative notes.
Send some straw as well.
We do have the snowpack that's on the ground, over the northern plains, upper Midwest, and that's gonna help. The ground is frozen there. When we thaw out, it's runoff. It goes into the Mississippi, so that's valuable. But you got to sustain that. That's only going to be a short period of time, right? So you look to the Rockies in Montana, and there really needs to be a strong boost to the snowpack if we're going to sustain Mississippi River levels going forward. Mm-hmm. And that's looking at snowpack and everything west of the Mississippi. The outlook for spring is favorable for moisture in the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. And not that those are great contributors to the entire Mississippi River system, but certainly it helps.
Yeah.
So the combination of all these things does help the Mississippi as we thaw out and warm up this spring. But then it becomes early summer. We really have to have Montana come through with some good snowpack.
Well, I mean, it is the last best place, but well, and again, it's just we live, succeed, and go through so much just dependent on this weather. Matt, what are just some other tips or just insight you'd like to share with our listeners here today? Again, we're going to have multiple conversations throughout the year with Matt, and again, he shares great information on these forecasts every single day. But just any last thoughts just to share with our audience?
There may be thoughts or questions that are popping into mind, and so let me try to hit a theme that I've heard of on the trade show floor over the last couple of days. And folks get the impression that when we say La Niña is gone and will be very, very shortly, that they, in their mind, expect an immediate change. Drought's immediately gone. We're immediately wet. And in some cases, we will have super wet periods. But to sustain it, to break the drought, is very long term. So I think it's important to just emphasize, pump our brakes a little bit. We still have a long way to go. And you see that not only in the weather outlook, but the cattle market as well. So they're kind of tied together, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, there's a little connection there. And we are so negative territory now. Both will progress, but be patient as we progress in both items.
Now, we had quite the weather event, obviously, right before this, at the start of this convention, and all my friends up in Montana have been sharing pictures of they wrote down we had fog on this date, and 90 days later, we had a weather event. Is that a wives' tale, or what are your thoughts on when fog rolls in and then rain or snow comes down the line?
There has been research over the years of people tying, early in the season, say like October, November, of finding a connection in storm frequency. Are they going to be every 45 days, every 62 days, whatever it may be? So there is some research out there. And it's obviously not a proven science, or else we'd all be millionaire weather people. But you can find cyclical patterns like that. And they're different every year, but you can find that. You can, with your territory down through Colorado, you can see a storm frequency. Last year it was pretty much literally every 7 days. So there is a connection. Statistically, I could give you the number, and it would probably not be a statistical connection, but anecdotally, there's a bit of a cycle there.
Have you ever got to sit down with a rancher or a farmer that goes decades back with their weather journals?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A guy comes to mind out of Eastern Montana. His name is Lon Rukoff, a past Region 5 Environmental Stewardship Award winner. And his weather records go back all the way to like his forefathers and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, man, you have better records than than Noah probably. Is it Noah that would keep that?
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm just like, I just think that's such a treasure to be able to watch that and learn also about how to manage your operation through those tough times too. And I'm just like, I want to do more of a story on that down the road too, because that is valuable information. And sometimes if you're cleaning out Grandpa's house, make sure you go find those weather records if he documented those every day.
Sure. There's actually two members that immediately came to mind. One is in Oklahoma and one is in Colorado. And their weather knowledge and weather documentation over the years is phenomenal. Especially the one in Colorado, because he has partly forested pasture, and he's not in the greatest of health and knows his granddaughter's going to take it, and he's force feeding this weather data to her, saying, look at these years where we couldn't depend on anything, or look how the forest impacted us, a very centric microclimate just on his property, and it goes back. I want to say the 1940s for him
Wow.
personally that he recorded. But before him, his dad, his grandfather, so the 1800s. And for the government, NOAA, you can find records back to like 1860s, 1870s with some reliability, but they're few and far between.
Yeah.
And then in Oklahoma, it was more a matter of sustainability, hitting drought periods. And they're really using their data record to take kind of what I provide as far as an El Nino or La Nina outlook, and they pull their own years and know exactly what happened and exactly what section of their land had what. They're out there and they're impressive.
I just think it's so cool to hear that because it is history, but it's a management tool for
Absolutely.
your landscape.
Yeah, and you were there, you were the observer,
Yeah.
and that is priceless data.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Matt, where can folks go to learn more about your forecasts that you do all week long, and also just the publications, of course, through NCBA and Cattle Facts as well?
Every month in National Cattleman, there's going to be a breakdown. Sometimes I get into the weeds on like why something is happening and try to break it down and explain it, kind of like your initial question about La Nina. Kind of touched on that before. And then the next issue will be a seasonal weather outlook or another topical topic. For Cattle Facts, they get monthly updates, and those are always seasonal. A month outlook in the next 3 months. That's always going to be the case. And then through NCBA social media channels, Cattleman to Cattleman, provide some weather outlooks there, and start to touch more on what's the latest with La Nina. Is it gone yet? Those kind of details. And then once you get to the social media aspect of NCBA, that's where you can be more topical, more timely, and that's where you can find the hazardous weather information, the outlook for maybe the next 2 weeks, what to watch for coming down the pike. So all channels that have NCBA on it, you'll probably find some weather nuggets there to help out.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I know our listeners will be as well. And again, we just want to thank WSR Insurance and AgRisk Advisors for sponsoring our weather content across the board, and the media groups here at NCBA. And again, Meteorologist Matt Makens, thanks for joining us here today.
The weather's always fickle, so we'll try to keep you prepared the best we can.
Well, thanks for joining us, Matt.
You bet, my pleasure.
All right, friends, that will do it for this conversation on the Cattleman's Call podcast. I'm Lane Northland. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordland. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.